Welcome back to the Samvaad Podcast Series, Decoding the Scriptures.
Right.
We often think of scriptures as these rigid, rule-bound texts.
Right.
But today's deep dive takes us into a world where scriptures meet artistic expression. The world of Dhrupad,
Yeah,
a classical Indian vocal genre,
that's right.
as seen through a collection of 1,004 Dhrupad song texts.
That's right. This collection is called the Hazar Dhrupad, or Sahasras. And what's fascinating is that it's attributed to Nayak Bakhsu,
Okay.
a legendary musician, but someone whose life is shrouded in mystery.
Okay, 1,004 song texts attributed to a mysterious figure.
Yeah.
This sounds less like decoding scriptures and more like an episode of Unsolved Mysteries set to music.
Well, there's definitely an element of intrigue here. But to understand the significance of the Sahasras, we need to understand Dhrupad itself. It's one of the major vocal genres in Hindustani classical music, known for its solemn and spiritual nature. Think of it as the musical embodiment of deep contemplation.
So we're talking about a musical tradition that's not just about entertainment, but about connecting with something deeper.
Exactly. And Dhrupad has a long and rich history. For centuries, it enjoyed royal patronage with kings and emperors supporting its development. In fact, some scholars believe its roots go back even further, possibly intertwined with ancient Sanskrit musical treatises.
Wow, so these song texts might be giving us a glimpse into a musical tradition that's even older than we thought.
That's the exciting possibility. Now coming back to our mysterious composer Nayak Bakhsu, he was associated with Rajaman Singh Tomar, the king of Gwalior, who reigned from 1486 to 1516, a period considered a golden age for Dhrupad.
So he was composing and performing at a time when Dhrupad was flourishing. But if this was a golden age, why do we know so little about Nayak Bakhsu himself?
That's the paradox.
Yeah.
Despite his prominent position, details about his life are scarce. Contemporary sources offer only glimpses, making him a musical enigma, a figure whose legacy is built more on his work than on biographical facts.
So it's almost as if his music speaks for him, telling us who he was.
Precisely. And that's where the Sahasras becomes crucial. This collection, compiled over a century after Nayak Bakhsu's time under the patronage of Emperor Shah Jahan, is our primary window into his artistry and the world he inhabited.
Wait, so we have a collection of song texts compiled more than 100 years after the composer lived.
Right.
How can we be sure these texts accurately represent his work?
That's a valid question. And the anonymous preface to the Sahasras acknowledges these challenges. It talks about the process of compiling the collection, the difficulty in verifying authenticity, and the criteria used to select these specific song texts. Imagine even back then they were grappling with issues of preservation and documentation.
It's fascinating to think about the effort that went into preserving this musical heritage.
Right.
But how do we even know anything about Nayak Bakhsu if contemporary sources are so limited? Where do we get these glimpses into his life?
We have a few key Persian chronicles to thank for that. For instance, the Ain-i-Akbari, written by Abul Fazal between 1595 and 1596, mentions Dhrupad as a prominent musical form and names Nayak Bakhsu as a composer.
So Abu Fazal himself acknowledged Nayak Bakhsu's contribution to Dhrupad. That's significant. What other sources shed light on him?
Another important source is the Padshah Nama by Abd al-Hamid Lahari, written between 1627 and 1647. This chronicle provides a more detailed account describing Nayak Bakhsu's musical prowess, his close association with Rajaman Singh Tomar, and the high esteem in which he was held by both musicians and patrons.
This is giving us a much clearer picture. Clearly, he wasn't just a court musician, but a respected figure, a true maestro of his time.
Absolutely. And then there's the Rag Darpan by Nawab Saif Khan Fakhrullah, written in 1666, which mentions Nayak Bakhsu's innovations in combining ragas, highlighting his contribution to the development of Dhrupad.
So we have these historical accounts that place Nayak Bakhsu in the context of his time. But what about the Sahasras itself? What do these song texts tell us about the man and his music?
Well, one thing that might surprise you is that the Sahasras challenges the common perception that Dhrupad is solely focused on religious themes. Yes, there are devotional compositions, but there's also a whole tapestry of themes exploring love, beauty, artistic rivalry, and the complexities of human relationships.
Wait, so we're talking about love songs? Songs about jealousy? Maybe even diss tracks from rival musicians? This is a far cry from the image of solemn spiritual music.
It certainly adds a new dimension to our understanding of Dhrupad, doesn't it? And a key figure in many of these compositions is the Nartaki, or Patara, a highly cultured courtesan. The song texts often revolve around her world, her experiences, and her relationships, giving us a fascinating glimpse into the social and cultural landscape of the time.
So through these song texts, we're not just learning about musical forms, but about the lives, loves, and heartbreaks of people from centuries ago. It's like listening in on history's most exclusive jam session.
That's a great way to put it. And what's remarkable is that Nayak Bakhsu uses the Braj language in these compositions, a dialect prominent in the Middle Country, or Madhya Desha, where he was based.
So he was using a language that was familiar and relatable to his audience, not some high-flown, inaccessible language of the elite.
Exactly. And while rooted in Sanskrit, Braj was also influenced by Persian and other regional dialects. It reflects the multicultural environment of the Mughal court, a melting pot of languages and traditions.
This is painting a fascinating picture of Nayak Bakhsu. He's not just a composer, but a cultural figure, someone deeply connected to his time and place using music to reflect the world around him.
And that connection is what makes the Sahastras so compelling. We get to see Nayak Bakhsu not as a distant historical figure, but as a living, breathing artist.
We've covered a lot of ground already, from the historical context of Dhrupad to the sources that shed light on Nayak Bakhsu's life. But I'm curious to delve deeper into those innovative raga combinations you mentioned earlier.
Right.
What exactly was he doing and why was it so significant?
That's where the real musical detective work begins, and that's what we'll explore in our next segment. Stay with us as we unravel the secrets of Nayak Bakhsu's musical genius.
Welcome back to the Samvaad Podcast Series, Decoding the Scriptures. Before we delve into the specifics of Nayak Bakhsu's musical innovations,
Okay.
let's take a step back and consider why his experimentation with ragas was such a big deal.
Okay, I'm all ears. Help me understand why this was so groundbreaking.
Well, in the world of Indian classical music, ragas are much more than just scales or melodies. They're frameworks for musical expression, each with its own distinct character, emotional quality, and even a prescribed time of day or season for performance.
So it's not like just picking any set of notes
Right.
and playing whatever you want.
These
There
actually-
are rule structures, almost like a musical grammar.
Exactly. And for centuries, these ragas have been passed down through generations, with musicians adhering to these established structures. So when someone like Nayak Bakhsu comes along and starts blending ragas,
Right.
it's a bold move, almost like rewriting the rules of the game. I see. So it's not just about creating new sounds. It's about pushing the boundaries of what's musically and emotionally possible within this tradition.
Precisely. Now remember Nawab Saif Khan Fakrullah and his book Rag Darpan. It's a fascinating text that gives us insights into Nayak Bakhsu's raga innovations.
Right. Ragdarpan, the Mirror of Ragas. Wasn't that the book which contained a Persian translation of Rajaman Singh Tomar's Man Kutuhal?
Yes.
It's amazing how these texts connect across time and languages.
It really highlights the cross-cultural exchange that was happening during this period, and in Rag Darpan Fakrullah specifically credits Nayak Bakhsu with the creation of new ragas by blending existing ones. He mentions 3 such innovations, each showcasing Nayak Bakhsu's deep understanding of melodic structure and his willingness to experiment.
Okay, give me the details. What were these musical alchemy experiments?
One example is the creation of a raga called Bahaduri Todi.
Okay.
Nayak Bakhsu achieved this by combining the traditional todi with elements of Deskar. And interestingly, he named this new raga after Sultan Bahadur Gujarati.
So he's not just innovating musically,
Right.
but also weaving in political and social connections, maybe even paying homage to his patrons through his compositions.
That's a plausible interpretation. He was, after all, a court musician navigating a complex world of power and patronage. Another raga he's credited with creating is Kangra, born from a fusion of Siam and Kambaichi.
Wow. Blending 2 distinct ragas to create a third agarbard. He wasn't afraid to push boundaries and explore new sonic landscapes. What was the third innovation?
The third one mentioned by Fakrullah is perhaps the most intriguing mine. Nayak Bakhsu created a new kalyan distinct from the traditional one by combining elements of Hamir kalyan and Jait kalyan.
So not just 2, but 3 ragas coming together.
Yes.
This must have been quite a musical feat. Did this new kalyan catch on?
It did, and it became known as Nayaki kalyan, named after the composer himself.
Wow.
It's a testament to his creativity and the impact of his innovation that his creation earned its own distinct identity.
This is fascinating.
Yeah.
We're seeing Nayak Bakhsu not just as a composer working within established forms, but as a musical architect, deconstructing and reconstructing elements to create something entirely new.
Yes. And this spirit of innovation is evident not only in his raga manipulations, but also in the language he uses in the Sahastras. Remember how we discussed his use of Braj Bhasha, the language of the people?
Right, a language rooted in Sanskrit, but also influenced by Persian and regional dialects, reflecting the multicultural environment of the Mughal court.
Right.
But how does this connect to musical innovation?
Well, think about it. By choosing Braj Bhasha, Nayak Bakhsu was making his music accessible to a wider audience, breaking away from the more elite Sanskrit-dominated tradition of Dhrupad.
So he's democratizing Dhrupad in a way,
Mm-hmm.
making it more relatable to the everyday person.
And his mastery of the language is evident in the Sahasras. His compositions are known for their rich vocabulary, vivid descriptions, and emotional depth.
You've mentioned the emotional depth of his compositions a few times.
Yeah.
Can you give us an example of what you mean?
Sure.
What does this emotional depth sound like?
Let me share a few lines from a composition in Raga Suha, which portrays the longing of an Artaki for her beloved. It goes, "My heart is restless, my eyes are filled with tears. Where has my beloved gone? The night is dark, the wind is cold, and I'm all alone."
Wow, even without the music, those words are so evocative. I can almost feel the Nartaki's longing, the emptiness of the night, the chill in the air.
And that's the power of Nayak Bakhsu's lyrical skill. He combines the simplicity of language with a depth of feeling that resonates across centuries.
We're starting to get a more complete picture of Nayak Bakhsu. He's a master of melody, a lyrical genius, and a cultural innovator. Someone pushing the boundaries of Dhrupad while simultaneously making it more accessible and relatable.
He was truly a visionary of his time, but the question remains, how did his contemporaries and later generations view his work? Did they embrace his innovations, or was there resistance to this new way of approaching Dhrupad?
That's a great question. Did Nayak Bakhsu's work become a turning point in the evolution of Dhrupad, or did it fade into obscurity? That's something I'm definitely curious to explore.
Well, to answer that, we need to look at the lasting impact of the Sahasras. How did this collection influence later generations of musicians and shape the trajectory of Dhrupad? That's what we'll discuss when we return for the final part of our deep dive into the world of Nayak Bakhsu.
Welcome back to the Samvaad Podcast Series, Decoding the Scriptures. We've been on quite a journey with Nayak Bakhsu, haven't we?
We have.
From the mysteries surrounding his life to his groundbreaking musical innovations, it's amazing how much we can learn about a person and their time through something as seemingly simple as a collection of song texts.
It really speaks to the power of art to transcend time and connect us to the past. But as you mentioned, the question of Nayak Bakhsu's legacy remains. Did his innovations reshape the landscape of Dhrupad, or were they a flash in the pan, soon forgotten?
Exactly. We've seen how he pushed boundaries, blended ragas, and even incorporated elements of the vernacular into his compositions. But did these changes have a lasting impact?
Well, looking at the Sahasras and its continued relevance even today, I'd say the answer is a resounding yes. It serves as a vital link to the historical development of Dhrupad, offering insights into its evolution that we wouldn't have otherwise.
So it's more than just a collection of beautiful songs. It's a historical document, a window into the musical practices of a bygone era.
Precisely. Remember how we talked about the possibility of Dhrupad being connected to even older Sanskrit musical treatises?
Right.
The Sahasras, with its diverse themes and rich lyrical content, provides valuable clues about those earlier traditions.
It's like holding a piece of musical history in our hands.
Yeah.
But how has the Sahasras specifically influenced the way Dhrupad is performed today?
The collection acts as a repository of knowledge, preserving not only the lyrical beauty of Dhrupad, but also its grammatical and structural elements. It gives us a glimpse into how Dhrupad was composed, performed, and perceived centuries ago.
It's almost like having a master class from Nayak Bakhsu himself, passed down through the ages.
In a way, yes. And this knowledge continues to inspire contemporary Dhrupad performers. The song texts within the Sahasras offer a wealth of poetic imagery and musical ideas that inform and enrich modern interpretations of this ancient genre.
So Nayak Bakhsu's work isn't just a relic of the past, but a living tradition constantly being reinterpreted and revitalized.
Absolutely. And the impact of the Sahasras extends beyond the realm of music. The song texts, particularly those centered around the Nartaki, offer valuable insights into the social norms, artistic sensibilities, and courtly life of that era.
It's amazing how a collection of songs can become a portal to understanding an entire culture. Historians, literary scholars, cultural anthropologists, they could all find something to learn from the Sahasras.
Indeed. And for those interested in the evolution of Hindustani music, the Sahasras provides a fascinating case study. We see Nayak Bakhsu experimenting with raga combinations, pushing the boundaries of what was considered acceptable within the tradition.
He was a true visionary, wasn't he? Almost anticipating the dynamic and ever-evolving nature of Indian classical music as we know it today.
And his legacy continues to inspire musicians and scholars to explore, innovate, and keep this ancient tradition alive and relevant in the modern world.
This has been a truly enlightening deep dive.
It had.
We started with a collection of 1,004 Dhrupad song texts and ended up exploring a world of history, culture, and musical brilliance.
It's a testament to the enduring power of the Sahasras and the genius of Nayak Bakhsu, a composer whose legacy continues to resonate centuries later.
It strikes me that this deep dive has been about more than just Nayak Bakhsu. It's about the power of music to connect us to the past, to teach us about ourselves, and to inspire us to create something new.
Beautifully put. The Sahasras is a treasure trove, waiting to be explored, offering endless possibilities for interpretation and understanding. And perhaps that's the greatest lesson we can take away from this deep dive, a reminder that the quest for knowledge and understanding is an ongoing journey, and that sometimes the most profound insights can be found in the most unexpected places.
Thank you for joining us on the Samvaad Podcast Series, Decoding the Scriptures. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the spirit of Samvaad dialogue and understanding alive